This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Conservatives. Yeah. I noticed Joe's. I just rolled on.
I love the work. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of certain.
What are you doing? Yeah.
Right. Oh, I'm not sure what my phone number
Is it working now? It's a little cold in here.
So where is that link from, Gina?
I just forwarded to your email. I believe I said. Let me double check. Yeah. Up to email. It's in your email.
Yeah, that was, my thing was perfect. Yesterday was the first day.
Man, I told him to bring the flash drive. So.
I thought about bringing my bigger.
Oh, yeah, good, yeah. Jamie, hey, I'm sorry. I should have introduced you. So, we're having a meeting this afternoon. So I think it's.
Jamie, I think they're talking, David, about the meeting in February.
Okay, yeah.
So he's thinking if we can't do what we wanted to the city. And so he's thinking on Wednesday.
I mean, time conflict.
Yeah, time conflicts with the city presenting some too. I mean, usually we have on Thursdays.
Yeah, no, we were looking at Thursdays, but that's the first Thursday.
Yeah.
Second Thursday, you guys have the conflict, and third Thursday, so we were thinking maybe the second
Yeah, it's
Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that.
Call it a special session.
And we'll get a save the date out early.
Yeah, and then once you guys know, if you guys decide today, let me know. I'll just put it in.
Great.
Super easy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Well, I think we'll pin it down to that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Sharp
we
clawed
definitely know.
cats.
Another
Well,
appreciate
good to be one of the cats for the day. So nice to meet you.
Thanks, David. I don't know if Tom's on the agenda, but I don't know if he has a presentation or what.
Oh, no, he asked me for 10 minutes just to talk.
Just to talk. Okay.
It's free, and I
Yeah, I asked everyone before if they wanted something, let us know. Regina's here. Kevin said he just wants to talk about it. 15 minutes, ask questions. Some questions like
All right. Good morning, good morning, good morning. My apologies for getting started a little bit late. Thank you everyone who is here. I wanted to try to give a little bit of time for others to trickle in as they could. We currently don't have many people up front. Rather than leaning over to the side, maybe if you guys want to move a little bit closer. We do have some chairs available a little bit closer to the presentation. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Whiteford. I am the district scientist for the Ventura County Resource Conservation District, and I also am the current watershed coordinator for the Ventura River Watershed Council, which is our meeting today. So we have an agenda. We were supposed to begin at 9 o'clock. I had 5 minutes worth of opening remarks, which I've just eaten through. So I want to go ahead and go ahead into our typical, well, I guess current format where we give general council updates from all the members who are present. And so I'll go ahead and start since I happen to have the microphone at the moment. So again, good morning. I'm going to try to keep my remarks brief. We've got a busy agenda and we've got a short holiday month. So with that said, again, Jamie Whiteford with Ventura River, with the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. I want to provide 2 sets of updates. The first set of updates is with respect to council business. So as the watershed coordinator for the council, I just want to make those of you who are not aware of it, there was a meeting about 2 weeks ago, which was specific for the leadership committee, and that was simply administrative meeting. Many of you were there. So there are 2 things that I want to present to the general membership about that meeting. So one of the things that we discussed was the scope of work and the budget for the watershed coordinator position. Just as an update on that to the general membership. We did get some information relevant to the construction of the budget, and so we will be working towards coming up with a revised budget for the upcoming year. We're aiming to have a draft of that budget available in January. Second point, concerning watershed coordinator business. The Leadership Council addressed vacancies in the Leadership Committee, which was the point of that, one of the points of that administrative meeting back on November 21st. Everyone who's here should have received an email with an attachment that has a new and revised roster for the leadership and the executive leadership committees. And so that's an agenda item we'll discuss, but I just wanted to make sure to give everybody a chance to perhaps review that during the break. So I won't discuss that any further. Now, as district scientist for the Ventura County Resource Conservation District, I want to bring up 3 points, and these are updates relevant to VCRCD. First of all, the California Department of Food and Agriculture has a number of funding opportunities coming available very soon. There's a fertilizer research and education program, and there is also the Healthy Soils program. If you have a fertilizer management type project you're interested in pursuing, please reach out to me. If you have a healthy soils based project, such as putting in organic matter into the soil by any number of different practices, please reach out to me about that. Second update, the RCD is looking for science and technical advisors related to nitrogen management. or nutrient management for a water board grant that will be coming up in March. And so if you have an interest in nitrogen management from an irrigation standpoint or from a leachate standpoint, please reach out to me so I can get you on the SAC or the TAC for that project. And then I want to conclude with the statement that the Ventura River in-stream flow project has gotten a green light from the Wildlife Conservation Board. We have sent out a number of subaward agreements to a number of parties, some of whom are here to get started on that. We're going to have a meeting about that. It's going to be an administrative meeting after this meeting. You're welcome to stick around if you have an interest in that, but this is going to be sort of a nuts and bolts meeting for that particular project. And with that, I will pass the baton on to Tom.
Context, water journey, working on the RCD grant, the project council, and working for other landowners, others in the Ventura watershed. And also working on a statewide level on the implementation of voluntary agreements and Wildlife Conservation Board projects that enhance stream flow.
Thanks, Tom.
Just to be quite clear, water program director from Farm Bureau, Kathy Brenner, and the river.
With that, and the Sam Jackson, Kevin Williams, the water board.
Diane Engel, Ventura River Groundwater Association. Do you want us to be on candidates or announcements now or later?
I'm sorry. Well, I probably wasn't clear about that. Yeah,
No.
if you have announcements that you'd like to present, please do. This is the time to do that.
Well, so super briefly, I'll start handing out this little 3-page handout at our last board meeting. We approved a schedule, a work schedule for the GSP. So, you know, it's very detailed, but it reflects the tasks that Brian Bondi, our executive director, would have to lead the work that will be conducted by our hiring contractor, consultants in Ventura. And on it, you'll see there's several points that we will be public workshop with the standard operating procedures, where members of the public will come and weigh in on draft products. The first bill will be in the spring related to draft sustainability criteria and whatever quantitative modeling approach is being recommended, which should be developed in consultation with various parties that are trying to address flows in the Ventura. I hope I have enough copies I've got through. So upper Ventura River.
Okay.
Groundwater agency, so this is, yeah. If you do that.
Yeah, okay.
So if you have any questions about the schedule, or feel free to ask me, and those people who are listening can hear the questions over. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies. Yes, this is the time for any announcements that you want beyond just your introduction. So please make use of that time.
I'm Kelly Dyer. I'm the new assistant commandant in this part of this trip. I've been there for less than a month, so looking forward to meeting all of you.
Thank you.
Larry Rose, I'm the Ventura River Groundwater Agency and Ohio Valley Banking Service.
Shelby Ferguson, geologist.
We're geologists, never exclusions.
There's been a comprehensive fish habitat assessment for the California Conservation Corps. I'll just do a quick little, if you guys know any post-9/11 veterans, we're actively our issues team at the Cameron Radio Center. So if you know anybody that's interested in fisheries work, that's also they're in the military. We're previous one of the previous one session is about the got a job as a distribution technician over in Santa Monica office for CDW. So we're happy to see a lot of our work go on.
Thank you.
Monday, Lang, for a while.
Tomorrow, Cal David Harris.
Do you introduce Watershed Director?
Steve Offerman, County Supervisor, Bennett's office, and by way of announcement, the committee will likely be issuing an RFP for the operation of the Bullseye Valley Organic Facility.
And until recommendation for river.
Supervisor Foundation, the Coalition. Do want to recognize David Yard as he was lost. So David has been working very hard on behalf of the Solar Funding Committee, and is responsible for our success in getting the grant for the replacement of the Santa Bridge. So thanks for being here today, David. David is also in town because we're having a funding committee meeting this afternoon, and we are gearing up to have our a public meeting in February as part of this meeting so you'll learn everything you want to know about that project in February.
I'm here to your guest and I know
Thank you, Mary. Mike, introductions and updates.
Hi, I'm Mike Sullivan. We've been doing a yard's replacement and a farm and then a small water tank.
Very good. Well, I'm sorry?
It's the rain.
And it rained. It's all good. Okay, now if we could just hold on to that rain for a little bit longer into the season, that would be fantastic. All right, if there's no additional updates, anybody that wasn't aware that they could provide an update, you can speak now if you'd like. We're well ahead of our schedule. All right, well, with that then, we'll go ahead and proceed quickly on. So the next thing on the agenda would be, oh, did you have an update?
No, but in case some of you don't know, I'm Andy, Ventura County Resource Conservation District, and the conservation specialist.
Yeah, this is my colleague Andy, who sets most of this up actually. So thank you very much, Andy. All right, so we're going to move into our agenda item number 3, which is our update from the Leadership Committee meeting. So I referenced that earlier. There were a number of issues that we needed to address, scope of work, budget, etc. I provided a brief update on those discussions, and I think that that's probably at this stage all that we really need to discuss, unless there are any questions about those discussions from the general membership. The Leadership Committee sort of discussed our options for funding, and we're going to again be proceeding through those to try to come up with a revised budget for the upcoming year for the Watershed Coordinator position, as well as a refinement of the scope of work that is entailed and allowed by that budget. But one of the things that is important for us to consider is the revised roster for the leadership and the Executive Leadership Committee. Now, the reason that the table of a roster is important is because this roster actually does appear in the Ventura River Watershed Council Charter, okay? And so as a document that encodes and codifies our actions as a council, any revisions to that document requires that the general membership review those items, and then the Leadership Committee itself can take a final vote on those revisions. And so with that in mind, with this table, can I see a show of hands of those who are on the leadership committee in the primary responsibility role? Please hold up your hands. Okay, so by account then, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, can we please keep your hands up? Can we please see a show of hands for alternates who are here where a primary is not present? And I think that would be you, Mike, but you're looking at your phone, I guess. Oh, taking notes. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Now, that exercise was simply to point out that in order for us as a leadership committee to take action, we do have to have a quorum. Our quorum, according to the charter, is 5 leadership committee members who are present, and so we have that. So what that means is that we can now take action because we have quorum. The way this works is by simple majority. If we are okay with the current composition and roster composition of the leadership and executive leadership committee, we can go ahead and vote to allow that, and then those revisions can be made to the charter, and then we're good.
Do you want to put up the PDF?
I should put up the PDF, Andy says, so that for those of you who don't,
So you can see it.
yeah, don't have it in front of you, can actually see it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so for those of you who may not be familiar with the breakdown of this, you will see that there are leadership committee there are specific categories that make up the leadership committee. There's a government, and in that category, we have a variety of different individual organizations who are part of that category. And then you have primary individuals who serve in the capacity as representatives for those particular organizations, and then an alternate. So we can see the government composition, water and sanitary, land management and recreation. Now, I want to point out that the composition, the numbers, the diversity, all planned, formulated, and this council originally came together for the first time. So this has been thought through. This is their current composition and organizations. And any changes to this, again, since it is in the charter, has to be first made aware of to the council membership, and then taken action upon by the leadership committee. Land management, recreation already discussed, environmental, business, and landowner. So that table itself is for the leadership committee. The leadership executive committee is a sub-component made up of members of the leadership committee. So you'll see it's a smaller list, but it's pulled from the primary and the alternate representatives are pulled from the leadership committee. And there was discussion at the last meeting about trying to mix up so that there were primary and secondary, not necessarily from the same organization, but from the same category. So we had more diversity in that particular leadership role. Anyway. Are there any questions, or is there anything anyone would like to discuss? Yes.
If you scroll up to the environmental, there, I did get an email the other day from the Ojai Valley Green Coalition. It seems that they are undergoing some sort of reorganization and looking for new leadership. I'm not sure what the status is of that organization, but I haven't seen their name shared in a little while.
Okay, thanks.
Right. We have made our best efforts to reach out to individuals and organizations, and in some cases, one of the reasons why we had to go through this revision process was simply that leadership committee members moved on to new occupations or they changed their position, and so they weren't available any longer. So that sort of precipitated this chain of events. Yes.
So in that vein, I thought I'd introduce myself. I'm Tom Maloney. My name's up there for the director of the Ojai Valley.
Well, welcome. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. So there's Tom, we'll put him front and center. Yes.
Somebody needs to find that the Ohio Valley Sanitary District, because Ron Sheets retired, he's the alternate.
Thank you.
And find an alternative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any requests to move this so that people can see who are in the categories? All right, so with that then, I think there are no further comments or requests. We'll take note of those that we need to reach out to. That may be subject to revision, but to move things forward, I'd like to go ahead and see if we can revise the current charter. It's as simple as just making the revision in digital form. And then if we do get additional revisions, we can reach out to the leadership committee and go through this quick process again to update Ron Sheets and other contacts. So do I have a motion to go ahead and accept these revisions as they are? Okay, one. Okay, thank you so much. All right. So we are at a point where we've finished everything and we're only at 9:25. Okay. So one of the things that we have to continue to do is get ready for the presentations that we have coming up later on in our agenda. Now, I have no qualms moving the agenda forward a little bit, but what I'd like to do is get those who are going to be talking later on to come up, and either if you have a PowerPoint, we can get that loaded up on the laptop. Kevin, do you have anything?
Just sitting at the top.
Perfect. Me too. Awesome. Regina, we got yours.
Yeah, and Tom has a few slides that are at the end of mine.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. Okay, well, in that case, we can move very quickly. If anybody needs to take a potty break, please, let's go ahead and do that. And might as well move the break forward a little bit. I want to make clear, please, 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 make sure to sign in, update your contact information. If you're not on the list back there, please add yourself to the list so that we can update that. Our primary way that we communicate with the general membership and leadership committee members, executive members is through email. So please make sure you keep that updated in the back. And with that, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I would request the agenda still have at least a week before the meeting so that we can decide who needs to come to the meeting and so forth. But it's way too quick this time. I can't see other meetings and the time to plan. So if at least a week would be kind of great.
Yeah.
That was my fault. I didn't, they asked me if I could go, I couldn't respond.
We do.
In general.
oh, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
We do try to get the agenda out as possible. We all use, a lot of times things are in flux, so we'll just set a general agenda and we'll maybe post that to the website so people at least have a date and then they have a general idea of what the topics are. But rather than blasting everybody with draft agendas, we'll usually post that to the website. So please, we're trying to keep the website current with current information. So that's always a good reference and resource to be able to get some ideas about what the agenda is going to look like when we get to it. But point taken, we need to get things out faster. All right, so with that, let's take a short break. You can mingle amongst yourselves and use the restroom if you didn't have a chance to do so before you got here.
The two grants for it's nutrients.
Oh, nutrient loading grant, and yes.
So you guys do that, right? I mean,
And HSP you're talking about? Is that what you're talking about?
right. So you guys do those types of. So is it
Yeah, well, Jamie's probably going to speak more than he's spearheading that one. one specific, but he's wondering about the nutrient loading grant that you were talking about earlier, the opening. Looking for the text.
Well, there's a program that anyone can apply for. So obviously, ideally, you guys have partnerships. But I think it's so, for example, I'm already applying for So what's important is to check the policy proposals and see the priorities and then have to resist that, then you're on. Now, separately from that, we do have funding that will be available in March. Yeah, we still have the MII program. We've always struggled to find those even if you do financial analysis, that range, if there's a way for us to expand that, well, there are certainly avenues to do that. We just need a partner to sit down and write those types of plans with. So, because Hobby Farms has been something that we've had with Seeded in the past, I've looked to try to expand that beyond having a small but it's never really, we've never really been able to lock down focus.
Smaller.
Yeah. So would love to continue to find ways to get that to work.
All right.
We got 5-minute warning.
Hey, Andy?
Yes.
Andy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure you knew I was on the line. This is Lynn.
Oh, yep. We have you here. I'm just bringing you down a bit. Sorry, we're still trying to figure out how to have people talk back while we're doing this too.
Yeah, and I totally forgot to acknowledge that there were callers. I'm going to do that after the break.
If you have, you can still hear me, right, Lynn?
Yeah, I can hear you. I wasn't hearing other people in the room too clearly, but I can hear you and Jamie pretty well. So thank you.
Okay, we have the presenters coming up right next to me to start presenting. And
Okay,
then,
good.
but yeah, we're trying to work on that and fix the microphone and stuff moving forward. So sorry about that, but I appreciate the patience.
No, I mean, it's fine. It's been good. You guys got early to where I wanted to be. I thought I would be there by the time that they presented, but I can hear fine, so.
Oh, great. Okay.
And are you going to have us introduce ourselves on the phone?
Yes, actually, I will. Let me see. We got Danielle over here who's joined in too. Oh, I think she's self-muted on there. Yeah, once we come back, Jamie's going to make an announcement about the conference call in, and then we'll introduce you on the phone.
Okay. Do you need me to mute myself? I'm just driving, but
No,
are
you're
you
fine.
hearing background?
No, I'm not. Worst case, I'll mute you, but I'm not hearing any background.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. No worries. You're coming out of my computer speakers right now, so we haven't fully set up the system, but hopefully by the next meeting it'll be flowing well.
Okay. Great.
Oh, is Lynn on?
Yeah, Lynn's on.
Hi, Lynn. Good morning.
Hey, Jamie. How you doing?
Good. I'm good. All right. Let's see. Lynn, do you have anything you want to share as an update?
No. I'm good. I tuned in about half an hour ago.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and let everybody know that we've got a couple audience members on remotely, and I forgot to mention that, so I should make sure to make that clear to people who can't always make the meetings. Thank you.
Oh, is this your go-to meeting?
Yeah, we're trying to set it up better moving forward. She's wondering, Jamie.
Well,
Getting overwhelmed. Too many questions. There's sound on this. There's a little speaker on this guy, right?
Which one?
Your projector.
On the projector?
It's just a cute little video, but I thought there.
There should be sound through the speaker on the laptop, but we'll see what.
I also have a speaker that I could bring in. It's Bluetooth.
Oh, that would
Check.
abilities.
It should. This is an older laptop, so I use all the time. I just only use it for this.
Worst case, you could just throw it on the video on mine.
Yeah.
I have Bluetooth.
All right. I was hoping that we'd get all this kind of stuff sorted out during the break, but we didn't. So we're going to be working on a little bit of additional technical capacity here. Bear with us, please. But as we move towards that, one of the things I failed to note, and I apologize about this, but it's relatively new for us. We are trying to make sure that we reach a wider audience. We want to increase our participation. We want to increase our diversity. It's the only thing that's going to help us stay a healthy council. So therefore, we are actually at least recording this. Some small snippets of the proceedings will be available on the website. And again, this is to encourage participation and also just give updates about what the council is doing to those in the wider audience who might not be able to attend. In that vein, I also want to point out that we have implemented capacity to call in. So apologies again about the late notice on the agenda. However, we have, in the spirit of knowing that those kinds of things do happen, we have tried to make it possible for people to call in so that you can participate in the proceedings And so we currently do have 2 online participants. Lynn, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So Lynn Rodriguez is here, at least in spirit, not in person. And so please keep that in mind. I asked Lynn if she had any updates, and at that time she said she did not. Do you now, Lynn?
No, just thank you for giving me this opportunity because I'm driving in from a conference and couldn't be there in person. So I appreciate it. I really wanted to hear the presentation. So thank you.
Fantastic. It turns out some of the presentations, particularly Kevin's, is going to be verbal, and so you won't have missed much of a slideshow there. But thank you again for calling in. I believe, is it Deborah that's on the line as well?
No, we have one more. She hasn't formally introduced herself, but
Okay.
Danielle Yaconelli. I don't know if anyone recognizes that name.
Danielle, would you like to say hi?
She's muted her
Oh,
microphone.
she's muted herself. Okay. Well, again, just wanted to point out that we're trying to advance things so that it's a little easier for everyone to participate. There are going to be some challenges to that, of course, but please take note of that. And if you need any additional information about how to access remotely or anything like that, please reach out. We do appreciate that. So without further ado, I want to step aside so that we can get an update from Kevin Delano. So Kevin is going to talk about the flow model, right?
Yep.
So take it away. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Kevin Delano. I'm a geologist at the State Water Resources Control Board under the Cal EPA, working with water rights and something called the flow unit. I'm just giving some background. My unit started in 2015. We're directed under the 2014 California Water Action Plan to enhance stream flows for endangered fish species in coast rivers in California. In 2017, we entered into a contract to build a surface water groundwater model of the entire Ventura River watershed. Ventura River watershed was selected as one of the priority watersheds that we're working on in the coast ranges. So 2017, we started a modeling contract since. So I'm going to, first part of what I'm going to say is just kind of recap of the last 2 years, and then the second part of what I'll tell you about is what's coming in the next 2 years. So since 2017, we released a draft study plan. That was in fall 2017. The draft study plan that we released was our technical roadmap. It just outlined, this is our model development approach. This is what we're going to do. And then we put it out for public comment, and we formed a technical advisory committee. And we got some great feedback. We recognized some opportunity and need to improve what we were doing, revise our approach, or clarify what we were doing. There were some misconceptions and misunderstandings. Then the Thomas Fire broke out, adding more complexity to our model development project. So we've, since, that was in fall 2017, the model development train has been moving this whole time, even though we haven't released the final study plan. The final study plan is actually coming out. Got a text message from my boss. He said, we got approval to post it next week, which means it'll be out within 2 weeks. Things take a little longer than expected at the state. Maybe you expect that, but I'm learning. So final study plan is coming out. If you are interested in the model development approach, please take a look at it. If you're interested in the timeline for how things, how the rest of the model development is going to roll out, please take a look at it. The other report that we released so far, again, this is background, the other report that we released so far was a draft geologic analysis of the Ventura River watershed. And the idea here, again, was to get feedback on this technical component of the project, learn from local expertise, see what information we're missing or what we got wrong. And we released that in fall 2018, so a year ago. We got lots of great feedback, including from people in the room. And that revised geologic analysis is also coming out shortly. One reason these final reports are taking so long is after we went out for public comment on our draft study plan 2 years ago, we we recognize the need to expand our modeling project, to add in new work that wasn't originally in our scope of work, to add more money to it. So for example, new work that's being added, we're modeling groundwater in bedrock, where that influences surface flows or alluvial aquifers. So one of the concerns we heard is if you're pumping groundwater in bedrock, how does that impact recharge from bedrock to alluvial aquifers? If I use jargon, please interrupt me. So other components that we've added to the modeling project, we're increasing the number of what-if scenarios that we're paying our consultant to run. I'll get into those in a second. We have added kind of small memos along the way of model development so that people can understand some component of it that isn't defined in the study plan. The study plan is meant to be like the big picture with a lot of detail where we know what that detail is so far, but if something isn't defined there, like the geologic analysis or our what if scenarios or our approach for validating the model, those are going to be coming in memos this coming year, and you'll have the opportunity to provide feedback on them. And our contract amendment allowed us to have this kind of more sustained public outreach going forward for the rest of the project. So that brings us up to the present. We've got 2 final drafts of our things that have come out already, coming soon. And then looking into the future. So in 2020, we're expecting to release 3 documents. The first one, and you don't have to write this down, you can if you want, but this is in our study plan. These items are all mentioned in the expected approach that you'll be able to provide feedback on. So in 2020, we got 3 things coming out. We have a draft data compilation report. It's a really nerdy document that describes all of the information that we've compiled and received and researched and put together, and it summarizes it and says, you know, if we know what information we're going to use, like such as rainfall data, this is all the rainfall data that we have. Or if there are multiple data sets for something, such as irrigation rates, then we list what all of those are and say, you know, we're still figuring out which one of these is the most appropriate to use. So data report, right? So that will come out for public comment early next year. Please take a look at it. It'll be out for 30 days. We'll also share it with our technical advisory committee as well. If you're doing any kind of project related to water management and you are always at the start of your project with, oh man, we need information, this is a good place to look and see like, oh, okay, these people have compiled a lot of information. Maybe there's something in here I can ask them for. The other 2 memos that are coming out next year, one is our it's called our model validation memo. Basically, it was a technical thing that's not defined in the study plan. We want to show that this is what it is. We hadn't defined it yet. Now it'll be ready for you to look at. I'm not expecting that to be controversial. I can tell by people not paying attention. The thing that will be controversial, people that want to have a lot of feedback, is our what if scenario. So our other memo coming out next year is a scenarios methodology memo. It's basically describing these are the scenarios that we know we're going to run. We also have capacity to run more scenarios that are not defined yet. We want feedback on what those should be. And we're also going to define the scenarios. So these are the inputs. These are the model parameters that are going to change. This is how we're going to change them. So we want to kind of take away the black box of the what if scenarios so that people can have feedback on them, understand them, and how they're set up. That'll be later next year. We also expect to reach out to the TAC and the Watershed Council for feedback on, in a couple of informal ways. We might ask for input on points of interest. A point of interest from a modeling perspective is a location where you want to see model results displayed. You want to see what stream flow or groundwater level does the model simulate, you know, here. For example, a point of interest could be where California Department of Fish and Wildlife is doing their stream flow studies about what habitat fish need. point of interest could be a stream flow gauge. So we'll be reaching out maybe informally for your feedback on these kind of things. We'll also be reaching out informally with like a web presentation on the model calibration. This will be for our TAC or the modelers on our TAC to see behind the scenes. Okay, we've got the model calibrated. You can see how well it's looking or not working before we've got the report coming out in the following year. So I'm going to move into 2021 and I'll take all the questions that you have. So 2021, we're scheduled to release the draft model. That's the surface water groundwater model. And we're scheduled to release the draft report describing the model and everything that went into it, and all of our assumptions, our limitations, how well it works and what doesn't work, as well as the results of our what-if scenarios that we've developed with your input. That whole package is coming as a draft, public draft document and model and scheduled for spring 2021. At that point, we'll put it out for 60 days of comment. We'll hold a 2-day training workshop where anyone from the council and anyone that's interested can come and learn about this is what the model does, this is how well it's worked. And then that morning presentation will lead into a 1.5 days of technical training for modeling staff from interested parties. And that 2-day training workshop will then kick off 60 days of public comment where you can learn how the model works, or your staff can learn how it works and give us feedback. And at that point, it's out there and you could use it. It won't be finalized for more time after that, but it will be available. All right. Did I answer any questions?
Well, what comes after that? So you do the model, what's the status of the Department of Fish and Wildlife fish needs study, and how does that integrated into some sort of final recommendations or decree from your office?
Right. So the short answer is it's not predetermined. Like, but one way it can play out is the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is expecting to release their flow study early next year, and that study will tell us what the numbers are. What are the flow needs for endangered steelhead in the Ventura River and its San Antonio Creek? At that point, the State Water Board's official job is to take that recommendation from the Department of Fish and Wildlife and evaluate it and compare that with all the other water uses in the watershed. So that's why we're developing this tool. It's a modeling tool to understand how much water comes in, where is water used, how much water is used, and then what's the impact of that water use on groundwater levels and surface flows. So say if the Department of Fish and Wildlife recommends a number that's up here, that's a what if scenario we can look at in the model and see, okay, what water use changes would need to happen to make that number happen? Is that even possible? Or is a lesser flow number more realistic with the watershed? So we analyze their flow recommendation using this tool, and we begin to look at management scenarios. The State Water Board could set something like an in-stream flow requirement, but even if we were to set a requirement, the implementation to that requirement is still not determined. So say, the State Water Board says we need to see this amount of water in the river at these times of the year. Then we could pause and be like, okay, community, can you guys make this happen? You have 2 GSAs, you've got a lot of water savvy people, you've got a lot of landowners interested in voluntary agreements. As a community, can you make a solution happen so that the State Water Board doesn't need to come in with a regulatory implementation to achieve that, say, flow requirement? Does that make sense? But if that doesn't happen, then we do have the stick as the regulatory agency to implement something uncomfortable, more uncomfortable. Next question.
Actually, you just answered mine.
So as a new guy in the valley, I've heard a lot about the Thomas fire, and how are you parameterizing the difference in flow that's coming off of a major event?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So our model, we're building our model to the pre-fire conditions. So we're calibrating the model to 1994 to 2017, and it's going to end before the fire breaks out. So I call it the pre-fire calibration. And then we're going to take that model and run it for the post-fire condition to see how wrong it is. How wrong is it in simulating the surface flows and groundwater levels in the watershed for the first 2.25 years after the fire, which is 2018 to March 2020, so 4 months from now. And one of our what if scenarios, our consultants are going to take that pre-fire model and change parameters to, as best as possible, represent the post-fire conditions in the watershed. So changes in how water infiltrates, for example, how vegetation has changed, less evaporation by plants. And then we're going to run that post-fire model too. So we have our pre-fire model run for the post-fire period, and our post-fire model also run for the post-fire period. And we're going to see how different they are. So we'll be able to tell you when this draft model report comes out next year, or sorry, 2021, what changes we simulated.
And then the objection to that, in my mind at least, is there a land management protocol to help as well?
Is there a
like for sure, like expanding the first right of fire program or other land management tools?
That's certainly an idea. That's kind of beyond the scope of the water board.
That's great. That would be great.
Yeah, but that's not a bad idea if you think about that kind of stuff.
What's happening with the nutrient element?
Yeah, so I didn't mention this, but we're working with so I work at the State Water Board in Sacramento. We are working with the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board. They need to update their Ventura River TMDL, total maximum daily load policy. And I guess the limitation of their existing TMDL is that they're not able to sufficiently assess loading of nitrates or nutrients into groundwater from, I think it's from agriculture and from cattle farming. This kind of ties into something that was mentioned at the beginning. So they're going to use once our surface water groundwater model is complete, they're going to pull the groundwater model out, tie it with groundwater quality modeling, and then basically build a nutrient transport model that can simulate where nitrates are loaded into the groundwater and where those nitrates upwell to the surface. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Do you know anything about the timeline?
So it's the same project, and that nutrient transfer model will also come out and with the same spring 2021 report. It's all supposed to be done as one thing and come out in one report. So.
I recently attended a groundwater modeling seminar for dummies, and one of the things they talked about was uncertainty in your model. You have calibration, you have sensitivity, and you have uncertainty. Are you doing uncertainty now?
We're doing a sensitivity analysis, which might be the same thing. I'm not.
This is presented as being different than calibration, sensitivity, and uncertainty.
I'm saying that would be like climate change.
Not necessarily. I think it was just. I'm not. Talk about it as being a separate evaluation of a model.
Yeah,
Like a confidence interval.
I think it might be. The short answer is I don't really know. But
I would expect that would be great. All models are wrong. Some of them are useful. And typically reports are
I would assume that would be around climate change. It would be around
Well,
precipitation.
so, yeah, where we have data gaps or poor data, we'll have to say, we had to come up with a number for this parameter. This is the associated uncertainty. So any limitations or uncertainties will be explicitly stated in the report. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Okay. I'll learn more about it now.
Okay. Hey, Chris.
So you talked about posting what if scenarios prior to, or maybe I misunderstood the schedule, prior to results or a calibration, a model calibration report. Are the what if scenarios posting results?
No.
So they're just, they're pre-modeling.
I call it the method memo because it's explaining or exploring, these are what the scenarios are going to be. We're defining all the inputs and the parameters so that you can provide feedback on them before we run them. And then the results will be in the model report. Okay.
Are all the scenarios already decided?
Nope. We do Rob and softballs, I think. We've defined 4 scenarios. We are paying the consultants to run 8. The 4 that we've defined so far, or that we've selected, one is Ventura dam removal. So looking at the impacts of taking down the dam on surface flows and groundwater levels. The next scenario is called unimpaired flow. This is a state water board analysis that we do when looking at flow policy. The third scenario is going to be climate change and population growth projections. So we'll have to pick a single projection for climate change and a single projection for population growth and run that scenario into the future and look at the impacts of, say, changing temperature and precipitation patterns and more people in the watershed or land use changes on water availability. The fourth defined scenario is the Thomas fire. I mentioned that earlier. And then we have 4 undefined scenarios that we would like to develop with your input. So, for example, we could simulate groundwater sustainability plans that are being developed by the Upper Ventura Groundwater Agency and the Ojai Basin GMA. We could simulate voluntary agreements that landowner by landowner conserve water, dedicate water to the river, something like that, and look at the net impact of many small actions. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, are you gonna, thinking from the GSA perspective, your timeline for releasing the model is basically coinciding with our need to already have a draft GSP in hand. So, given that part of the GSP responsibility is to come up with management actions, wouldn't it make sense to run the scenarios after the GSA has had a chance to understand what management actions make sense to them? Because I see you're going to release the list of and allow input on what kind of scenarios should be run, but that happens early next year. That's before the GSA has had a chance to, based on best available science, even understand what kind of management actions are needed.
Right. So, yeah, the timeline is a little weird. Where this scenarios memo will probably come out later next year, not early. If the GSA needs to kind of move forward with your modeling and developing your plan before our information is available, before the model is available to as a tool to analyze your plan.
That is happening.
Yeah.
It's not, it's for sure.
Yeah. Then when the GSA has to update, or yeah, when you have to update your plan, model will be available for use. And if you, by late next year, if you have a plan coming together that we can then simulate in the model, we can do that and show you what the results are. Yeah.
So, given that kind of scenario, you guys get to the end of your report and your 8 scenario models. What, I mean, is there a potential for like getting new funding and adding scenario models? Like, or is that going to be kind of?
No. Well, the train has arrived in the station, and anyone that wants to run scenarios can run scenarios with the model. So I stress that we're paying our consultant to develop and running scenarios.
Yeah.
But we're using a modeling tool that's public domain and compatible with GSAs. So the idea is, once the model is ready, we'll hold a 2-day workshop where we'll train local modelers to use the model, and then you guys can run as many scenarios as you want. And that's what we want to see happen. Good. Yeah. And at the water boards, we will expect to be running more scenarios too.
Is it possible way beavers established in national forests long term, would that increase the amount of available water? Over so many flows, you could back up like that.
Yeah, we'd have to think about what parameters would you change in the computer model to represent, say, reintroducing that species.
Interesting.
I was just wondering if we could unpack Dan's question a little bit more.
Yeah.
In the sense that I understand there's a timing issue, but hypothetically, timing wasn't an issue. I'm wondering if you are, and you're here, maybe discussion about what are the differences I read in the work plan. Yeah, it talked about, there's still sort of wanted to the model itself that should be developing that would be suitable for the GSA to work in mind. If people can speak to specifically what are the differences on what they're doing with the GSA needs. And then when you get to the point where you're running a scenario based on the future GSP, what is that? And if and when the results don't align.
Okay, so, okay, go first.
Well, sure.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think it would be a little back and forth. So it's hard to talk too intelligently about what the GSP's modeling approach will be because our consultant is just now sitting down, consultants are actually planning a meeting with DWR reps and Kevin and his crew to kind of and what takes precedence over what potentially. So one of their first tasks will be to sit down and go, what kind of analytical tool, quantitative tool can the GSP come up with that makes sense? So right now it could be an analytical approach, it could be a variation of quantitative approach. It won't be anything, it won't be the same piece that Kevin's speakers do. I'm not sure that the GSP, I don't necessarily know the time frame of the management actions piece of the GSP would be able to happen on the time frame. That could be one of the 8 scenarios. I'm afraid they're moving quickly enough and not quickly enough at the same time. You know, it's like, things could be happening early next year or after our GSP is done. So there's this very awkward time where things are coming to fruition right on top of each other, giving neither activity the chance to adjust to each other very well. So we can look at the 5-year update process, which is highly unsatisfying to everybody. Anyway, now you go next.
Okay, so I think if you look at the handout that Diana passed around, one thing that we're figuring out is in our discussions is this question of a model is a tool to answer a set of questions, and some of the questions that the Upper Ventura Groundwater Agency has, I think you could use our model to answer, looking at long-term trends and maybe basin-wide questions of stream flow depletions or groundwater depletions. But if the Upper Ventura GSA wants to look at small scale questions, such as what's the impact of these specific wells on a daily time step or something like that, or teasing apart specific wells even more maybe, that might be too fine scale for what we have. It might not be, I'm not quite clear, it's still a lot of.
That's what Brian Bondy has indicated to us, is that the grid size and just the general construction of your model, that you could actually go in and break it into smaller cells to be reactive on that time frame, but it may actually be the case that different quantitative approach is more appropriate like that. Like, what's the lag time between an operation of a well and something downstream or so forth, that if you want that much specificity, that's important to the GSP. We might not be able to be answered with that.
Well, I was going to say, one thing that our model tool will be useful for is looking at month-to-month trends and seasonal trends. So if the Upper Ventura Groundwater Basin has a pumping management plan for an entire year, that's something that would be the model. I think our model is suited for looking at if you're looking at several hundred wells in the entire groundwater basin, what's the impact of that, so their timing of pumping and their volume of pumping on the entire Ventura River in their basin downstream. Does that answer your question? Does that help at all?
Yeah, it's helpful on that. I guess the model but yeah, I was wondering the timeline is the water get served by having two different models. Could that produce a conflict or coordination happen so that one serves to supplement the other instead of resulting instead of ending up in a situation where we have kind of two different.
Well, I'm not sure that the coordination that's going to happen will produce an optimistic outcome like that, but it will certainly produce more clarity. What the GSA will be forced to follow these good work. There's no way to say, please do ours 2 years later because the state will be doing it. We just have zero flexibility, unfortunately. So, so we'll have to see how the discussions end up.
And I wanted to kind of go off that one more time. What I think the modeling tools that, based on my conversations with Diane and Brian, that the Upper Ventura GSA is developing, like the Watershed is developing, they're not the same scale or scope, so they're not redundant. There is obviously overlap. If we're trying to use our basin, our watershed-wide model to look at a part of the Upper Ventura Basin or the whole basin, that is going to overlap with like the maximum extent of what their model might do. So there's overlap as they approach looking at maybe basin-wide things. But if the Upper Ventura GSA is trying to look at, well by well impacts, that's not something that maybe we can quite get down to. So they are going to be overlapping the different.
In an ideal world, Evans would like to do the first, and yours would follow after.
In an ideal world, but it won't be happening.
So actually, I had a conversation with the Department of Water Resources where I do not work. I'm not employed for water resources. I had a conversation with them earlier this week, and one thing I shared is that when I heard from the Ventura GSA that they're interested in having extra time so that our timelines can kind of match up more, and that DWR employee is not, he didn't think there's going to be any flexibility because the deadlines for the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act are set by the legislature.
Probably every basin in the state would like a couple more years. Utilization, alternate report approved. I don't know, maybe it's talking to occasionally moan about whether or not some legislation in a couple of years race through the local plans to wait for Kevin's work. It certainly saves the state a lot of money and grants, and it would be a lot more logical. If you were considering for your agencies, whether or not they're have a discussion.
Well, I can say that, I have a lot of faith in Brian Barty's analysis today, and I do feel that he feels pretty strongly that the state board's model may not end up being the best tool to answer. So I'm not sure really that if the time was there, that it would mean we could sit back and wait for the state model and adopt it, embrace it with open arms. And we certainly want, it's too bad we can't be informed by our approach. But I don't want to give the impression that if we had more time, we would throw up our hands and not pursue another approach if that makes sense to the consultant to. So it's super early days. That's why it's just really hard, because they just got their task order, the consultants, to start developing ideas about quantitative approach, and those ideas will be kind of presented in the spring, both to the ESA itself, and then we probably workshop. So the next few months are pretty critical in understanding what the impact can be. And I would say the points of interest, I would say that that's something the GSA would probably be keenly interested in speaking to, not just the tag or the product.
Great. Yeah, that was exciting.
Yeah. Points of interest. I've always been really interested in that reach. What they call the dry reach. There's no monitoring gauges or anything through that reach. Are you able to track that in any way?
Well, so we can simulate flows. We will be simulating flows through the dry reach. So if there's a particular area where you want to see what the model simulates the flows are, then we could pull that up and take a look at it. Without a calibration gauge to compare the simulated flows to, then our confidence in that simulation is our confidence in the calibration. So if we have good calibration with the model, like if our model is simulating surface flows well at surface flow gauges, then we can say with a certain confidence that in the dry reach, for example, we're simulating this flow or this flow. Does that make sense? No?
Yeah, well, so the reach varies, and at some point it goes subsurface, right? And so it's been amazing to see that bounce back after fire. So I just don't know if your model can represent that or not, because I'm not sure that was predicted or predictable.
What was predicted or predictable?
Persistent surface flows through that reach where there's no gauges, so nobody knows how much flow there was at any given time.
It's not completely ungauged. There is a gauge at Robles, below Robles Dam, and there's also we have wet-dry surface mapping or wet-dry mapping data where various looking at where does water infiltrate. We have some historically where is the dry reach beginning and ending. And then for the Thomas fire period, we're going to have to find to simulate how infiltration has changed and why we're seeing surface. Because if the model is simulating the dry reach and we know that there was flow through the dry reach after the fire, then we need to change the model to represent that for the post-fire period.
Right. Well, it seems like Scott Lewis has the best data on flows in the river. I don't know how often he goes out there like this year, where we typically ends up working in June when it's trying to drive up. But this year, I don't know, I haven't talked to him.
the edge way out there, every time there's enough flow in the river.
Right, right. So that's where I was kind of getting. That's just through there, and I don't know how that can be, incorporated in the model. That information is really valuable. And it has habitat implications and sycamore recruitment and things that in a dry spot you wouldn't see.
So we've been aware of the wet dry mapping data collection in that part of the Ventura River, and Scott's given us that information, and we'll continue to ask for it going into the future.
Yeah, Kevin raised kind of beginning because the GSA, we have Jordan here has been mapping the northern live reach on a twice per month basis now for a long time. He's got a report coming in January. It's something that as soon as the GSA an entity, he was saying that the southernmost point of the live reach, above 150 for years. And I'm pretty sure we can get him.
Yeah, we have the Jordan's report.
He's supposed to have a report by January-ish time frame, but then the monitoring will be ongoing after the report. So there's a little bit more than Casitas' monitoring. There's at least those two other efforts that, unfortunately, the other one kind of started off, it wasn't, Jordan's project didn't far precede the fire, right? So the fires kind of happened right from the GSA. All dry, but he has been doing that work. So to speak, cracking.
Well,
so that helps. It doesn't give you discharge. It's just here's the crack.
Yeah, I'm real curious as to what the modeling and what the data and what the conclusions are going to be regarding, how much of this is increased inflow, increased base flows from the upper watershed, how much of it is decreased infiltration, and if there's any way to tease that out and figure out what's going on. It's really interesting. I think Tom brought up earlier that prescribed burns or other approaches to land management might actually help enhance our water supply.
Yeah, there's a lot of I think the fire changed different parameters, like you said, infiltration versus overland runoff and less evaporation from trees, and I think there's another one you mentioned. And some, if you just start to think about them in your head, they can be contradictory. Like one might increase surface flows, one might preserve groundwater levels, or something like that. So that's something we're going to have to unpack going into the future. That's the point of our common fires.
I want to get too ahead of the components of the presentation. I'll follow up. One of the project components is to evaluate the United States Forest Services. Within the water rights perspective, it's about federal reserve water rights. So we can start talking about adjustments to federal land use. We might have a downstream use for some water supply for municipal or other purposes. There are other angles in which people want to have more refined granularity so that we can properly identify and track which component of the flow is coming from which potential right or source. And this gets a little bit tricky when we get into issues of voluntary water conservation pursuant to Water Code Section 10, 11, and 12. And if people are doing projects at stream flow, everybody wants to know how their piece of the water pie is being quantified.
Do you think my rainwater tanks put more water in the creek?
I'll help you answer that. One thing I wanted to tee off that though is I've heard discussions in other parts of the state where the mountainous part of their watershed is more taller trees that may use more water, but there's obviously like a land management and wildfire intersection here. If you potentially have an overgrown forest in your mountainous headwaters, it could be using more water. It expect to be using more water. So if you were to manage that land differently, to have less vegetation in the mountains, so it's not overgrown, then you might expect to see more water coming downstream.
Kevin, I think that's very specific to different regions, and there's different plants coming out.
Yeah.
Well, just over some of those, posing some of these questions and how it might fall into your what if scenarios. I mean, is there, the fire came at a time that, or the modeling came at a time that was after the fire. So there's a lost opportunity, like, for collecting some data. Advise some of those projects as well. Like, for example, you can't go back to pre-fire conditions and model from soil permeability. It's too late. So it would have to be an assumption that on your model output that, well, maybe soil permeability changed because I got a different result than I was expecting post fire. So and the specific question is within the state water board's workflow, is there opportunity to collect additional data that at least might inform post-fire conditions, since you can't do anything about pre-fire?
Right.
That opportunity is gone.
Sure. The answer is kind of. So I'm aware that, or as I understand it, there's various local, state, and federal agencies collected data on post-fire conditions. So we're expecting to use that information, say from CAL FIRE, from the county, from Forest Service, I would say, for example, soil permeability change after the fire. We can collect that information ourselves. We don't have that kind of skill set or on your time. But information was collected, and we're going to look at what was collected and use it as best as we can post-fire. We, around the time that the fire broke out, we actually started 2 stream flow gauging projects in the watershed. One was with the USGS. We paid them to improve the accuracy of their stream flow gauge at Foster Park for about 10 months. That coincidentally happened right after the fire. So we should have a stronger or more accurate stream flow record for that gauge after the fire. We also paid, or we're still working with the county Watershed Protection District to, they put in a new gauge on Camp Comfort, and that started the canyon of San Antonio Creek to measure outflows. So that's another new data collection point that we added post-fire. It essentially came in post-fire. Yeah, I don't remember exactly when. So I'll hand over here.
Are those gauges, sorry, one more question. Yeah. Are those gauges, is that gauge data publicly available?
Yeah, so we, the USGS, you can go on their website, the gauge for Foster Park, and you can see their flow measurements. Yeah. And then the counties is on the county's hydrology website. So they're both online.
And is the one you mentioned on San Antonio Creek, that's operated by the county?
Yes.
That's the same in the watershed server, you know?
Is, if I remember right, it links you to it. I'll follow up on that after today's meeting.
On your phone where it is too.
Yeah.
Yeah, our intention is that as we're paying for new stream elevation work that we wanted that information available.
And why did you bracket the effort that the Fox Park gave us? They just do more round trip thing, or?
So what they did, it was, well, let me say, it was a contracting limitation, bureaucracy limitation. It was also a test of the project. There's kind of documentation that the gauge at Foster Park has accuracy problems at low flows because the gauge is measuring water depth, and at low flows, that the water depth can change an inch or two, and if someone, say, builds a rock pond and the water level is, you know all this, but for the and this accuracy, this low flow accuracy is documented in like the Tetra Tech report from 2010 all the so we wanted to refine the gauge's accuracy at low flows. So we paid the USGS to go and measure the actual stream flow and tie it to depth once a week for 10 months. There's no ground truthing. Their existing funding allowed them to go out once every 6 weeks and during high flow events. Any other questions?
Do you want to speak to that?
I can go all day.
And in that spirit, it's probably time to move on to other topics. The one thing I did want to ask you, Kevin, so there's a lot of information. Obviously, there's a lot of interest. So given that the State Water Resources Control Board website can be a little bit of a labyrinth.
Oh my God.
Is there an easy way to navigate through the information, especially the draft reports? And except, or would it be a way for us just to link it to our website? That way we can just go straight in.
So yes, my unit at State Water Board has a website. We haven't updated it since fall 2018, not for my own efforts, bureaucratic top-down problems. But all of our reports go to our website. So currently, if you were to visit today, you would see the draft study plan from fall 2017. You would see the draft development analysis from fall 2018. Those will be coming down as we put up the final copies. We'll also be putting up these other upcoming reports that I talked about. Those will all be posted on our website. That's how we distribute this information. We have a listserv you can sign up for to get emails from our unit. And then I also tell the council when we post things that people are also aware that way. If you need that link, please talk to me afterward. It's in my email. You're getting an email from me. I want to thank you all for inviting me to come. It's my duty and honor to come and talk to you. We're privileged to have you come down.
All right. Thank you so much, Kevin. To answer the question concerning access to the stream gauge data on the Watershed Council website, it is there.
Yeah, it's under our Watershed menu to the submenu data.
Which brings me to.
I'll show you after.
Which brings me to that topic. If you have not had a chance to sort of go to the revised Watershed Council website, please do so. There's been a lot of time and effort trying to make it more relevant, more appealing, and a little easier to navigate. There are many, many years of very, very valuable information linked to it via Google Drive that's associated with it. And it's just been quite a task to try to get in there and get everything updated. But we are working on it, so please do us the favor of reviewing it for us and letting us know if things are functioning properly or not.
And to reiterate, we are always accepting any updates or anything that any of you see relevant to that website. Please do let us know. I know we tell you at every meeting, but we are open to that. So please send us an email. Some of you do, and we really do appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. For those of you who are active and engaging with us via email, via website, we do really, really appreciate that, that engagement and that feedback. Thank you. I'm going to wake up the projector here. I believe it is time. We are almost back on track. Thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing so much with us. We're almost back on track with respect to our agenda. Regina think you're up next, and I believe you have a presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. I think a speaker might be loud enough.
With that, I didn't find a speaker, so if it works, it works. If not.
Okay. There.
Speaking of the dry reach,
I'm gonna try to download it.
maybe I'll introduce myself. I'm Regina Hirsch, and I know most of you. I'm with Watershed Progressive, and many of you might ask, who are we? We are a collaborative company. We have a contractor's license. We actually install projects and we test different management practices across the state. We really hang our hat on innovating different water and land use management strategies. What does that mean? There's 26 of us in our company. Everyone says, Regina, how do you do everything? All this. I don't. Actually, I just walk around and get to say, hi, Larry, how you doing? And come and talk to you all. But I actually have a great team that really works on all this. I was asked to just talk about some of the projects today that we're working on in the Ventura. So I just picked out a selection. I could talk a half an hour or an hour on any of them. So when I thought we had more time, I was like, ooh, we can open it up for discussion. Because any one of these projects, I think, has a lot of interest probably for many of you here. But instead, maybe what we'll do is I'll go through, and this is a short list, but ones I thought were key and interesting. I think right after me, Tom is just going to talk a little bit more on the Ventura in-stream flow framework. So, I guess a little bit more about myself. I'm a farmer's daughter, grew up in New Mexico. We do have an office here in Ojai, but I do live in the Sierras, and I live here about a week a month, and starting next year, I'll be living here full time. Just so you know, so you'll all get sick of seeing me. Very, very. I'm gonna pick on you. I used to work at the Regional Water Quality Control Board in San Luis Obispo, and then I moved up to the Sierras, where I have family land. I worked on PMDLs at the state board in San Luis Obispo for the Morbe Watershed. So I have a water quality background, and since then I've learned a little bit more about water quantity. I think that's it.
All right, well, I've got your PDF here, but unfortunately, it's going to have to be for the clip.
So I think these pictures here are just to like you guys a little bit better map view of some of these projects. By the way, this is, I think it was the Steelhead Summit. I don't know how many of you guys were there, I'm not sure. And we were looking for the beginning of the beginning of the live reach in the dry reach. So that was one of the things that we did is we took a lot of different land use managers, natural resource managers, and went to the top of the canyon and saw where the input was for the main stem, and then also walked down to the confluence and then walked up to try to find where that live reach was based on our best guess. Unfortunately, our best guess was too high up, and we walked over a long way on the dry reach, and we were. But this has really stuck in a lot of the other natural resource managers' heads who don't live in Ventura and who make policy decisions for us elsewhere. They're used to seeing rivers run, and when they come down to Ventura, many times I've been standing with different policymakers or grantors, and they say, okay, so take me to the creek, and I'm like, you're standing in it. And they're like, this is a road. And I'm like, no, this is a Southern California stream. So understanding what a dry reach is, how important it is to all of you know, but it's important for us to take the rest of our California counterparts out on So I guess I'm gonna just, let's see, how do I get to the next slide?
You should just be able to, yeah, scroll down.
Scroll down.
Yeah, just click there.
Got it. This will be fun.
Mhm.
Here. All right, well, this is kind of about us and the watershed, but we won't worry about in all our partners, and I'll keep going. One of the first projects I thought you guys might want to hear a little bit more about is integrated water strategies. At some point, we will come and our project team will come and do a full briefing to you on this project, just so you know that it's ongoing. It is a project that encompasses San Antonio Creek watershed. Here. So San Antonio watershed is in the project area, but there's 6 other watersheds we're looking at in Santa Barbara County as well. And what we're doing is we're trying to identify projects that can enhance stream flow. So again, we're just trying to identify projects that enhance in-stream flow for these watersheds in Santa Barbara County, and then for Ventura County, it's San Antonio watershed. There's a spatial model that was developed that is right now being ground truth. And as soon as that model is ground truth, that's something that we would refer to the watershed council and give your input. There is a technical advisory committee that's working on that. And again, it's just identifying those projects. Second to that is there's a base model of how the approach was taken that will be ideally scalable, and we can then increase the model significance to, say, the rest of the Ventura River watershed or other watersheds around the state. So that base model package is part of the grant. This is funded by Wildlife Conservation Board, and the project partners are Creeklands Conservation, Hicks Law. We also have Soul Water Sciences, Cal Poly, University of San Francisco, and South Coast Habitat Restoration. North Star Engineering is also on the roster. So that's our project team. The output of this will be made in a base model, but it also has 6 to 10 project plans and actual meetings to tell people about what the treatments are. So we're identifying what the type of projects are. Again, are there projects on these parcels that look like they can enhance in-stream flow? Are we finding different project types? What are they? What are the tools and solutions? So we're going to have a stakeholder meeting. We're actually going to have 3 based on that output when we get it. So we'll be 3 stakeholders. Some of those might include irrigated buffer strips, right? Or prescribed burns, if that's what the model calls. Lastly, out of the grant is 6 to 10 project plans for those sites that are identified in the model. So again, it's not just a plan that sits on the shelf. We're going to actually, and we're actually in mid-stride in this right now, is coming up with 6 to 10 plans for those parcels to help come up with implementation funding for those projects. So again, if we find there's willing landowners that want to actually take part in enhancing stream flow and they're identified in the model, then we can help them with funding to plan that project on their property. And then they can find implementation funding, or they can implement it on their own. So that's integrated water strategy. We refer to it as IWS. And again, it's an identification tool. It's a model, but as you all know, we talked about a lot today. It's just a guiding.
What kind of platform are you using for that model?
It's, I'm not the person to ask. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered if that had anything to do with the model or.
So there's been a lot of, so we have 3 GIS analysts working on it, and they're also very aware of work with the state tool. Unfortunately, the timing was off for when this was being developed and when the state water boards. So this is one project. It should be 20, but I think we'll start to see outreach of that within the next fall. Next is Ojai Valley Inn, and sorry, it looks like the slides aren't even fitting on the screen. This is a project that a lot of you guys have heard about. Ojai Valley Inn is stepping up and they're actually committing to reducing their water use by 50%. They're all, which includes also redoing their golf course. That's a large ask for them. They have a very traditional golf course. Within the golf course, they also are looking to enhance in-stream flow through actually infiltration basins within the golf course, as well as reducing the consumptive use. So this is one project that we're working on. Part of the funding came through the VRF grant, which Tom will talk about a little bit more, that was awarded to the artists. So some of the project planning money for that was through the grant that you hear Jamie talk about. And you guys feel free to, this is can be a discussion. Just go on. Our next highlighted project, and I'd say it's a series of projects, again, a suite, is Thatcher School. Over 400 acres up against Forest Service property. Most of you know Thatcher School campus. So they've done everything from working on forest restoration, fire BMPs, rehydration within their wildland urban interface, to reusing water, whether it's wastewater, gray water, black water. They're looking to decrease their water footprint by 90% by 2040. They also have been funded independently by the Wildlife Conservation Board. They're putting in 1.3 million gallons of rainwater for dormitory toilet flushing and irrigation offset. That will then offset the amount of water that they divert to Thatcher Creek. It's a complete non-diversion of water. Yes, I can say that again.
I was gonna say, I think that actually falls across from before.
So in this, in Thatcher, in this project scenario for Thatcher, they're getting water off their rooftops. They're going to use that alternative water that they use from their rainwater to flush toilets and irrigate their plantings instead of diverting it from Thatcher. They are choosing not to divert. So they will not divert that amount of water.
And what was the number that you said?
1.3 million gallons.
Is that being stored?
Yes, so they just got done with their conditional use permit through the county, and their building permits. So they will have a lot of rainwater tanks all over their campus. Again, like I said, we could have fun with just talking about just that project. There's a lot to it. Yeah.
90% is already been provided.
Yeah, and I'd say 90% is a fun number. Most parcels that money is not an object in your water footprint. It's really typically more that we can't, our potable drinking water is still the last holy grail. You don't drink rainwater in California. Now they're starting to do it in New York State and other groups are starting to drink rainwater. But your potable supply, rainwater is not typically your best use for drinking. So potable supply is usually your last footprint where it's hard to recycle your potable supply. As you all know, there's direct potable that's going to become legal in California at some point, where we actually inject wastewater into the ground and we're going to pull it out and drink it.
That's indirect.
I'm sorry, indirect. And that will get there as well, but rainwater or even that is not yet the point that's potable. So that's one of the reasons the 90%. There's a lot of other projects going on. They have a lot of orchards, but they're going to be trying to best management practices of different treatments to try as a learning laboratory within their orchards. They're also going to be looking at trying to store peak flow and use that instead of taking any other summer diversion water. And so they're really thinking outside the box. This is all within a water management planning effort that started back in 2014. So yeah, so that's Thatcher School. Did you want me to say that again, Paul? About drinking water?
1.3 million, that's, I just can't imagine what that looks like. I got 5,000, it's big.
So, there's a project up at Cal Poly University, and it's a good, just quick story if I can tell you. I don't know how many of you guys have been to San Luis Obispo. I went to Cal Poly. I don't think you've been to Cal Poly. There's the Cal Poly Bowl unit had a lot of rain or nutrient loading to a creek called Dairy Creek. And the runoff would come off the Bowl unit and go into Dairy Creek. And the regional board was upset because the values in the creek, the pathogen levels and the nutrient loading was really high, and the sediment. And they traced it back to the Cal Poly Bowl unit. And so they looked at that and said, well, we need a drainage assessment to try to figure out why that's happening and how to mitigate that. Well, it was coming off of their rooftops that were shading the Bowl unit, and the high velocity from that impervious surface increased higher velocities, and that's where really the drainage issues were happening that sped up the water and created the erosion. So getting that water from the rooftop and collecting it and slowing it down became our main priority. Oddly, that amount of water that was collected on the rooftops, which was, I think it's 580,000 gallons, is how much that Bowl unit pumped out of a neighboring creek called Pennington Creek for their water supply to water those cattle, petted cattle. So it was a nice match that if we collected the water off of the rooftops and it was 580,000 gallons, some years 700, it depends on the precipitation, that we could then offset the amount of water that they actually pumped out of Pennington from riparian wells. And they signed an agreement with the state to say, we will not pump during summer months, and we will water the cattle instead with this water, the nuisance flooding water, and causing nutrient loading and sediment loading to the other creek. So that's the kind of project that we're trying to look at, with innovative water strategies in general. Anything over 100,000 gallons, Cal Poly and Creeklands Conservation and Stillwater Sciences are monitoring those projects, such as the Cal Poly one. Anything over 100,000 gallons, they can start to sometimes show up in some of the different monitoring of the groundwater and interstitial flows. Anything under that, they're not really seeing. So if we're offsetting over 100,000 gallons, say with that amount of water or rainwater or something, we can start to see it in watersheds sometimes, depending on the hydrogeology. Yeah.
Are you using ponds rather than tanks? This is back to Paul's question about how much tankage you put in.
So tanks are beautiful, right? Ponds evaporate. It depends on the site. In some cases, a tank is better suited because of certain reasons, and other cases, reservoirs are better suited. And it just depends on the site. Sometimes a reservoir is better because you can have detention or retention. Sometimes you can have infiltration as well. At Ojai Valley Inn, they're not going to put in tanks, they're going to probably put in ponds. Because also they're trying to do enhanced in-stream flow with more infiltration. So it just depends on what the objective and the site is. You guys all probably are looking at me going, yeah, 1.3 million gallons of rainwater is a lot, but it's not 800,000 gallons worth of storage. If you, again, tank balance lesson, you guys all know this, if you guys have a tank and you use that water for irrigation in California, you're storing it. Although Ojai gets really hot and you still irrigate sometimes even in March, I've noticed. In most places in California, it doesn't make sense to use rainwater for irrigation. It's not actually the best match. The better match is to use rainwater for something that is, while it's raining, you're using it. Breweries are great matches for rainwater because you're actually brewing beer and making beer while it's raining. Toilet flushing is a fantastic match. A dormitory school like Thatcher uses a lot of toilet flushing. So depending on the site analysis, you're trying to find the best match. You don't have to have that large of tank if you have a drawdown so that you use the water while it's raining and it can fill up that empty space. So sometimes you don't need as large of a tank as what you're. Does that make sense?
1.9, yeah.
1.3. But there is another project going in for the horse unit as well. That's another 500,000 to 600,000 gallons worth of rain.
Because we had over 2 acres of orchards, I believe, trying to do the math to see if they would have enough water to irrigate them.
They don't have enough water to do the orchards, but they do have enough storm water to irrigate for the orchards if there was a way. But again, rainwater falls on rooftops, storm water falls on the ground. I will keep moving. Hopefully these are interesting to you guys. Tom brought up the Forest Service. We are working with the Forest Service on coming up with 5 to 8 different project types. And this is a planning project. It is within, again, the Ventura in-stream flow grant from the RCD. And so there will be different ideas that are thought through with the Forest Service on how stream flow enhancement can happen from the Forest Service level. Another one of the fun projects that I'm excited about, not too many people know about it except for the school district, Pheasant Hill and Ojai Valley, Thatcher School, is the All Schools Initiative that we're just starting to kick off. And so through some of the data that we've been starting to collect, we've looked at every single school property, how it overlies with the groundwater basins, and also what different tools or opportunities are on those schools. So there's a lot of opportunities within just our schools. Ojai, as you know, has a high capita of schools compared to other regions. And so it ends up, just for the schools alone, they have about 500 to 600 acre feet of water if they just change their irrigation practices on and their speciation of their turf areas, for example. So just how we can use the nexus point of education and demonstration of these schools. These are rotating places that our kids come to. They grow through them, and new parents come to pick up their kids every day as high nexus education demonstration points, as well as actually meaningful water infiltration in some cases, and most definitely water conservation. So again, this is an all schools initiative that's just starting to happen. So you'll start to hear more about that. Within this document, there are some of the schools within the Ojai Unified School District, this grant, the RCD Ventura in-stream flow grant, that did get funding for planning some of these projects out. So we've been working with the Unified School District. Miners, Oaks, and Matilaha were the ones that were highlighted. We're also going to try to come up with a plan that actually identifies some more of the stream flow enhancement opportunities at a few other sites that are starting to pop up. Again, they have to enhance in-stream flow, which not every school in the school district does. Sorry for the list. Maybe the visuals aren't, so I could have just given you the handout. For the city of Ojai, this was a really fun project that we're essentially done with. The final report has not been released by the city quite yet. I think they're going to do it in another month or two. And this is the comparative analysis for reduced consumptive use and recharge. And it should have been labeled infiltration instead of recharge, really. What we did is we looked at the entire sphere of influence, and this was paid for by the city of Ojai, along with some match funding from the Wildlife Conservation Board. And we looked at every single parcel using Eagle Aerial over aerial data. So I don't know how many of you guys have Eagle Aerial is a local company here in Ojai, and they do flyovers and visual imagery for water agencies and the Department of Water Resources. So they actually take digital imagery and help delineate irrigable surfaces, different types of turf, rooftops, permeable, impermeable surfaces. Many of the water agencies in this room know of Eagle Aerial and have used their data. So what we did is we took those delineations on every single parcel within the sphere of influence. So City of Ojai boundary is the yellow boundary, and City of Ojai asked us to do the sphere of influence. So that's the red boundary. So we popped out and looked at every single parcel, and we looked at turf, irrigable surface, permeable, impermeable, rooftop, slope, soils, topography, and then we applied what our algorithms of our toolkit. And we agreed on the toolkit was we wanted to be accessible tools that people in residences could implement. That includes gray water. We included gray water because the UCSB Bren School report came out that they thought gray water was going to be like the #1 answer for Ventura River watershed. So we included gray water in there. Black water reuse, mechanical water reuse, air conditioning project, which by the way, that's a big opportunity here in the valley. We looked at ocean-friendly gardening, irrigation practices, slow flow protection, stormwater infiltration, meaning rain gardens, and other devices, and I think that was it. We were going to add carbon farming and nutrient practices, but we haven't done that yet. So we did all that, and then we looked at it by sector, and we said, how about in the hotel industry? How about across schools? What about across residential neighborhoods? And what about city and public-owned parcels? So we took all that data and then we pulled a climate assessment and scenario out and found quite a bit of interesting data. Now the city has every single parcel with what the opportunity toolkit is. That will play into, most likely, there's a dashboard that's being funded by this grant again. And the water dashboard will be a place that residents could go on and actually see what are the opportunities on my property. How can I make a difference for in-stream flow or for the water balance within Ojai Valley? So again, to give you an idea, I think I threw a slide in and what one of the tools came out as. This is gray water. I had this in because we were just at the Bren School the other day, and they had done an assessment for gray water use. I thought, well, I actually have done a lot of gray water. I kind of fought it for a while, but in some cases it can be a good tool. So gray water for the sphere of influence came out to, in residential, 620 acre-feet potential. Again, this is 100% potential. This is if everybody did it and if everyone, if it was working well. So again, we just put the 100%, most likely, even if you got 10%, that's 62 acres. So our potentials here are very interesting for what came out. And it actually spoke to, we broke it down into neighborhoods and came up with different neighborhoods that would be higher potential for in-stream flow or infiltration, and maybe be of interest to some of the basins.
That you're capturing 100% of the gray water from the residences?
This, I think we were doing 100% of gray water, yes, of the residences. We also did stormwater infiltration, but we did just site water. We did not, so it's called site water, not runoff. We decided not to do runoff with our tax. So we did just site water. We looked at also all the roads and the complete street program that Ojai City is working on and how maybe they could actually redo that a little bit and some of the opportunities there for infiltration. And there were some really large opportunities. So again, this data will be released in the city plan for some of the projects. You have any questions?
Is there a cost benefit on say gray water and then black water as well?
So there is a cost benefit on each, and there's actually a toolkit that came out with this as well. So each one of those tools has a cost benefit analysis, as well as a recommendation for a typology or a way to go about installing customized for this area. So that entire catalog of projects is there. It also identified 35 projects within this whole entire area of highest value and ranking based on what the technical advisory committee came up with as the values that they wanted to see. In-stream flow was one of them, but it was not the only one. Infiltration obviously was one of the highest. All right, I'm going to keep moving on because I think I'm probably getting close out of time. Senior Canyon Water District, working with them on a water management plan. Ventura Ojai Water Agency partnership. A great group that's been dialoguing about how to actually increase conjunctive use within the watershed. And so I've been attending those meetings and really honored to see the groups collaborate more and more. This project here is the most people refer to as the in-stream flow grant. That's what I've been holding up. Tom can talk to you about that. That's just about to kick off today or tomorrow. So I won't talk with you about that. Watershed Progressive is working on the Ventura bike path feasibility. So we'll be doing a feasibility analysis that again is funded through this grant for the Ventura Ojai bike path. And that is actually looking at opportunities for infiltration enhancement and any way to enhance in-stream flow, as well as educational opportunities. One of the ways for us to enhance in-stream flow is while we're doing it is to demonstrate it. And this is a great corridor that links all the groundwater basins along the river. It's a fantastic topographical feature, and it has some opportunities. So we'll be doing a feasibility analysis. I think we're going to be starting that in March, so we'll be hoping to talk to the council about that. The Landowner Resiliency Program. I'm so sad you guys can't see my slide. This is a program that was started by DWR and the Tuolumne County Resource Conservation District up north. And it essentially is an outreach direct install program, recognizing the opportunities that land use strategies on the parcel level can do in aggregate, meaning if everyone implements these gray water actions, we can actually add up to not just acre feet of water, but other multiple benefits that we need. So this landowner resiliency program has taken off in Tuolumne and Calaveras County, now Amador County. Ventura River Water District and Ojai City have brought, and the Ventura Conservation District have brought it down here to Ventura. So we're going to be we kicked it off in a pilot program last fall. We're going to be working on it with Ventura River Water District and the city of Ojai further. And so you'll be seeing more and more about this. Typically what it is a direct install program or rebate program where commercial businesses, public entities, or residents can get direct technical advice and planning for the opportunities which are on their land. And then in some cases, they can be eligible for rebates or even direct install of those pieces, which is really the win-win. Up in Tuolumne, they received $3 million from DWR for just the indirect install portion. So that program is going along as well. Again, it's not just residents that get the funding, it's also commercial businesses and public entities. And I should also state, this is probably one of the leading edges of the resilience factor within watersheds. How are we actually going to get our homes, our businesses, and our public right-of-ways actually resilient and get those strategies on the ground? These types of programs. Homeowners especially don't want to have to deal with contractors. What is the right method? How to do it correctly? Did I get the right parts? Direct install programs are the way that are moving forward faster. We need the pace and scale of what we need with climate change. This report card you can see here is our multi-benefit report card analysis that we bring with the LRP program. So it's not just always about just in-stream flow. It's not just about water conservation. Sometimes it's about, job creation or heat island reduction. So this report card analysis, where we're Pacific Institute now on coming up with a better backup on the not return on investment, but the
I hear you.
you hear me?
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
But on how we can actually quantify each one of these. But what's not necessarily important is for us to quantify each one, but to understand the presence of those benefits as we plant a tree or don't plant a tree or cover our soils or irrigate differently. What benefits do we get out of that project? And how do we actually move through and understand the true value of a project? If we only look at the bottom line of how much water we save in a stormwater project, for example, we won't really understand that larger values of multi-benefits within that project before we start to list them out. So this, again, we call this a resilience index or opportunity report, but every single assessment that's done comes with it, this multiple benefit report card. All right, I think that's about it. These are also our toolkits that I already talked about. Each one of those is within the city report, and DWR also helped pay for some of that toolkit benefit analysis, and that will be available to the Ventura River Watershed once we kick off the LRP program. Many of you guys attended the LCW. We're planning on having another LCW meeting at some point, follow-up. It's localizing California waters, and we had one back in April. Valley Inn, I think so, everybody came. We just had another one, which was a statewide meeting, and we missed a lot of you, but some of you guys got to come. Really good information, ways for us to connect and across silos so that we can actually get. And Tom, with that, I don't think I'm going to talk about our pending application for the watershed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So have you thought about, in the integrated water strategies, doing some project implementation to validate the model? You're identifying projects that have potential for benefits for flow. What about just going ahead and implementing some stuff and then validating the model?
So we are.
Okay. What project?
So Thatcher School is one of those, for example. So that will be one that's validating the model. And then there's some other projects in Santa Barbara. And as we go through and actually implement, those will be the validation. There's a ground truthing memo that if anyone wants to also look at that for the IWS. I'm happy to share that. I think I do just because of your question, I just want to let you all know we did put in a pending application to enlarge the IWS model to the full Ventura River watershed. We felt we couldn't really say much with it just being San Antonio. So we put in an application for that for the entire Ventura River watershed. Also to enlarge the toolkit quantification that we did within the sphere of influence all the way to the full Ventura River watershed. So combining the IWS identification of in-stream flow with the quantification of every parcel really allows us to understand more what our opportunities are. And so that application is pending funding right now. And so I just wanted to let you guys know. Again, I can share these slides with you guys if you can't really see them too well.
If you go down a little pop up there at the bottom, you move your scroll over, there's a full screen, like that right there.
Does that help?
Still doesn't. No.
Sorry about that, you guys.
It's because it's at
It must be
100%.
Presentation mode.
Yeah, but I think this is in the reader versus. So
Yeah.
it's just in reader mode.
And so this this here, you guys can see, this is the combination, you can see the overlap of the sphere of influence with the San Antonio. This is right here, this is the OHI comparative analysis data overlaid with the data from the IWS. And so we would like to see, we did an analysis to see that there was a lot of potential projects we felt within the Ventura River watershed. And so we would like to be able to have a contiguous amount of data set to look at instead of a fragmented data set as we start through the new year. So we'll find out, I think, in a couple months when we got funding for that.
You said we reflect on that application.
So the project team, it's listed up here, Creekland Conservation is the project proponent, along with Stillwater Sciences, Hicks Law, and I think that's actually it, and Watershed Progressive for that.
And Tom is gonna talk in just a moment. I just want to jump in real quick. So one of the things that Regina is referencing is the Ventura River Issue Flow document. That's a big document there. So there are a number of projects that Regina has discussed. The Ventura County Resource Conservation District is involved in that. There's actually a little bit of money in the funding for the Watershed Council coordinators involved as well. So a lot of these projects are going to come back to the council for discussion and for further exploration as things mature, particularly with respect to those that are embedded within that Ventura River Stream Flow project. So there'll be a lot more information coming your way as we move forward with that.
And I forgot to announce this Friday, one of our design team leads is also teaches at USC, and her graduate students that she teaches, they pick Ojai School District and 5 different other schools to do their thesis study on. So they're going to be presenting their ideas from a landscape architect and water management standpoint this Friday. You guys are invited 2:30 to 6 at the OUSD, Ojai Unified School District. If you want to come and see what their ideas are for different thought processes at the school, so I'm so excited. And do you want to own this slide here, Phil?
Sure.
Okay. Sure.
When you guys are talking about doing something on Ojai for Ojai bike trail, just briefly, is it just catching water at the sides of the trail? What is the thought?
So there's a lot of different project types. And first, what we would like to do is a feasibility analysis, is just look and see what the different project types are by going through systematically and looking at the entire topography. It could be everything from offsetting some water use at adjacent properties to cooling the bike path and cooling soils, removing invasives along the bike path in the riparian corridor, because again, removing invasives can actually take a lot of water out of the watershed and sometimes enhance in-stream flow depending.
That also has one thing when you guys are talking about it, the Ventura Ojai recreation trail.
Right.
Under the name, the Ventura
River Parkway.
If
Yes.
we could get that name.
Yes.
To these documents, it would really
Yes.
help the awareness that it exists and.
Yes, thank you. And it's on our map and it's actually listed at the bottom. Yeah. I should have actually verbally used that.
There are a lot of different crews working on projects along the trail.
No, but part of the work will be to connect with everyone and sit down.
Because there's been some misunderstanding.
So the effort is to collaborate and then also look at what the feasibility are and essentially do a design shift. Yeah, sorry, I didn't state that too well. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Watershed Council meeting. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Tom Hicks. I recognize many of you, but not all. I'm a water attorney, and I represent landowners that have just their usual range of issues that might be most often with each other, but often with regulatory agencies or others. But I also do a fair amount of public interest work related to wildlife conservation board projects that enhance stream flow. And I'm most often on project teams in the capacity of a landowner attorney, trying to think through how, especially with the use of public money to accomplish what might be called public interest outcomes, enhancement of stream flow. How do we ensure both an integrity to what the state might be paying for, but also a vigilant awareness of what landowners' real property interests are, what their water rights are, and with that, my role on these project teams is to really think through in the ideal world of the win-win. A lot of the work that I've done also is informed by voluntary agreements like conservation easements. People heard of conservation easements? Work with land trusts, work with landowners that are doing voluntary conservation. And most importantly, over the last 20 years, starting in Oregon and spreading across most Western states, is the development of tools, organizations called water trusts that are working on the very front lines of what are often dicey water resource use scenarios where there just isn't always enough water for farms and fish. And what we're finding is that, especially up in Oregon, now the Freshwater Trust, other organizations have sprouted out across the West, are really engaged to make sure that conservation solutions can be found for landowners to achieve what might be called some of the regulatory goals and aims. Okay, yeah, whoa, real quick.
It's very sensitive, Tom.
Maybe I should have stepped back a second. Is anyone here a water attorney? Sorry, just a second.
They're going to grow up, Tom.
I used to be a whitewater rafting guide, and I had a hobby of geology. You'd always want to make sure that there weren't any other experts in the boat before you started going off and talking about anything for a few hours. So to kind of zoom in, a lot of the work that I've done, some of you may already be familiar with some of the work product that has come out of this integrated water strategies grant. I know Kevin, God bless him, and the State Water Board, first talking to members of the in-stream flow unit, hey, can we talk about voluntary water transfers? And it wasn't Kevin, somebody higher up said, what are you talking about? I said, well, Wildlife Conservation Board, 2014 water bond, Prop 1, projects that enhance stream flow. And there was a recognition on my end that the perspective of the regulatory agencies didn't quite factor in. There's a whole different scenario. And I was very relieved to hear Kevin say one of the main engagements of the Integrated Water Strategies Grant team over the last 2 years has been a series of conversations with the State Water Board, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and other agencies saying, whatever scenario planning you're doing, whatever in-stream flow target might be achieved, we need to think through 100% voluntary conservation approach to get there. That's not to say that everybody in the community is going to move in that direction, but unless we have that option and clearly defined it as a pathway, we're never going to be able to get to those in-stream flow goals through voluntary methods. So again, many of you might recognize this map of Ojai. These are groundwater wells. Here we're on an alluvial fan that ultimately, as water comes out of the mountains and these creeks, one of the first things I recognize, I say it by point of disclosure, I represent landowners who grow citrus and avocados and grapes, but I also work with Regina at the Thatcher School. And one of the first things we saw with the dormitory rainwater project is even if you're going to have rainwater, it's going to be offset from a surface flow. There are not that many surface flow diversions in the basin, and most of the action is in the groundwater. But if you even stop diverting the surface flow within some distance downstream from that diversion or non-diversion, that water is going to get reabsorbed back into the aquifer. And if the state, wildlife conservation or others came out and said, show us the water that we helped pay for, well, what you're really looking at is groundwater recharge. So how we go about coordinating and enhancing stream flow, potentially through dozens, if not hundreds of individual points of contribution, it's a thesis. We have not done it, but what we have been working on is some of the legal architecture that would make it realistic for people to conserve water. And again, I'll use some of the framework that Regina's using. Today I use 100%, tomorrow I use 80%, in 10 years from now I use 10%. And what we're looking at is, well, what happens to all those percentages of conserved water? And I think there's a real opportunity, as you'll see. Then there's another look at the geologic complexity of the basin.
And this is the upper, or the,
Ohio Basin. So by the time we're now looking at what might be 15 different project partners in the RCD grant, 24 different project components, I might be getting the number wrong, but we're looking at a potential of maybe 3,500 acre-feet of combined water conservation projects. Now that's a high goal. It also might be a conservative number. There might even be more opportunity. But what we're really doing as we kind of scout this rapid out is what happens to all that conserved water. We know that the channel keeper in the city of Ventura recently entered an interim settlement agreement benchmarking certain flow thresholds in Foster Park. To the extent that there's more water from the upper watershed that would be entering that reach, we see an opportunity for a voluntary agreement. A lot of this is still early stage, but to the extent that these dots on the map can, the State Water Board has something called statements of diversion and use. Has anyone ever heard of them? Well, in a nutshell, with all these overlying groundwater users, whether Kevin said it or not, they're most likely going to be determined to be in a hydrologically connected basin. Many of these overlying landowner users, groundwater users, are using water that they're filing paperwork under the traditional groundwater management regime that is not the State Water Board. But if found to be hydrologically connected riparian water, they're going to be filling out these statements of diversion of use. To the extent that they can benchmark and document their conserved water, we see an opportunity to add those units up and bring those units into the lower reach of the river on a purely voluntary versus a regulatory strategy. Again, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. There's a lot of groundwork to be done. This is my last slide. Maybe a little bit to digest. But the crux of it is that when approaching these solutions, I stand in the shoes of landowners who want to help. They want to conserve water, and they want to make sure that somebody's minding the store and doing some proper accounting of where all these increments of water are going. As we know, there's a lot to be desired in terms of modernizing water management systems, monitoring, gauges. All these data points take time and money and resources to manage, especially over timeframes. The Wildlife Conservation Board is interested in 20-year type horizons at a minimum. So as you think about how do you reach landowners with a message of we can do something, right in the middle of this Venn diagram, you might not see it in all the density of font and language, but public comments. I think that at different times, if you see the other circles, DWR, this is written from the OVGMA's perspective, Wildlife Conservation Board, State Water Resources Control Board, Department of Fish and Wildlife, Fisheries Service. Each of these entities has regulatory authority, and it makes it very difficult for landowners to feel that they have flexibility to contribute to a voluntary solution. But our mission that we chose to accept is to find a way through the sweet spot of this Venn diagram where a voluntary agreement can be forged that benchmarks conserved water savings, depending on who comes up with the funding to implement these projects. You can proportionally say, well, the Wildlife Conservation Board wants to spend 100% of all the money for all the implementation and presumably get 100% of the benefit from enhancement of stream flow. That's one solution, one scenario. But more realistically, in a basin like this, we're going to see multiple beneficial uses of this water. Multiple partners contributing to the funding of the implementation of these tools that Regina just talked about. But if done, I know, because I'm working with a number of inspiring people across the state, but especially, with the work that Regina has done to elevate and to bring these projects together. On a state level, we know that the state of California is looking very closely at the Ventura River watershed. They already had been before this grant was issued. But in the middle of, we haven't even said the comprehensive litigation word until now. So I think that was my number one goal, is to not talk about that before we needed to. But the reality is that the Channel Keeper lawsuit with the city of Ventura has been settled on an interim basis. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done to kind of bring the full vision of what this community can do together to conserve water, to enhance stream flow, increase urban municipal water supply, increase sustainable yield, to increase the security that farmers need to know that under any wet, normal, dry, critically dry, multi-year drought scenarios, they have some assurance from whether it be the State Water Board or others, that if they take voluntary measures, they're not going to get hit with a regulatory stick. How we do this, again, is the fun part, but what my being here today is really like an opening. It will be, again, the Integrated Water Strategies Grant has some final reporting of any grant. That's always the fun part. Many of you have probably seen some of my memos or comments to the State Water Board. If not, don't worry, there'll be a report that'll summarize it all and then some. But the point will be that you really see this as a launching point toward again, we're not naive, but we're optimists. We're partially idealistic, but we're also realistic. You're not going to move what might be 3,000 to 4,000 acre-feet of water into the lower Ventura without a coordinated voluntary approach. We're going to continue to use the regulatory stick. We're going to lean on the State Water Board and ask them to comprehensively adjudicate the basin. We fear that the climate change horizon lines that we look at will have us moving backward toward any meaningful goal. I know at different times, again, mercifully, I don't have to talk that much about connecting to the state water project, but the implementation of these projects is a much clearer, more direct, tangible pathway for the local community to exert longer-term control and at least have higher confidence in wet water that will be delivered. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so our agenda takes us through 11:45. Looks like we've got another 10 minutes. So hopefully there's a common thread to all of this, right? We're talking about a flow model that integrates the entire watershed. We're talking about a variety of different projects that integrate the whole watershed, and voluntary agreements to sort of get everybody involved, feel like they're contributing, and still being able to quantify what the value is. So this entire meeting really has been about a comprehensive overview of sort of holistic approaches to watershed-wide water management. We've got 10 minutes. We had hoped there would be maybe a little bit more time. So going even back to Kevin's earlier presentation, we talked about the model. Regina as well as Tom will share our questions from the audience, sort of based on all the information that we've heard and how that all fits together. Please feel free to ask any of us those questions.
Yeah, so Tom had another big number there, very impressive. I think it was 3,500 acre feet. Yep. And, big numbers are great, but I'm just wondering how that fits into the overall water budget. Is that 10%? Is that 50%?
I haven't run those numbers.
Okay, so that's where I'm going with it. About a decade ago in this watershed council, I started advocating for a water budget so that we had some understanding of what our current demand, what our current supply was, and I think that's the starting point for any discussion. And I know Kevin's work somehow is quantifying that. We had a study that was reference was done by the Brand School about a decade ago. It had some numbers in there. From my recollection, 3,500 acre feet, that's probably, I don't know, what is that, Bert? That's about 20 or 30%.
It's like 65% about what's coming out of OI.
Yeah. But that was both bases. So it's including the other bases.
Race through down the river to the ocean. You can talk about just the water that's available for domestic use and below.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about discharge from the basin at all. I'm talking about actual water price, supply and demand. How much do we have? How much do we use? And when we start talking about different projects that offset that, you want to look at it in terms of that budget. And I think that that's probably the most valuable tool that you have to kind of gauge the effect or potential effect you might have.
The only,
Go ahead, Jamie.
your hand went up. I was being rude. I'm just standing up here talking. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, we asked that the University of Massachusetts worked with us on a water budget. It ended up being way not granular enough. So we wanted it for our comparative analysis study, and to understand how everything fit within that. There's a lot of data gaps within the water information. Whether it's from casitas or other groups, there was some data gaps that we needed to fulfill to actually make it more granular and useful. But I totally agree with the water budget. It's important. We all have to define what a water budget means and what we should support. And I think there's different layers of the water budget, or the watershed versus the water budget. And what are your line items?
And I think there's an important point to be made about, I'm an attorney, so I'm not going to do a professional job. Definitions are something that we all struggle with. And to use the lingo of the wildlife conservation, where they're trying to enhance stream flow, the State Water Board is trying to increase unimpaired flow. The National Marine Fisheries Service, when it approaches safe harbor, is trying to create net conservation benefit. And all of these are being pegged off of some, what's the baseline conditions. And then we're also now adding the layer of OBGMA and sustainable yield. And there's another, I think maybe this is being kind of poked out before. OBGMA comes up with proposed alternative, DWR rejects it, they come back, they approve it. The State Water Board is still in the offing, potentially a couple of years down the line, denying the approval of that plan because it doesn't adequately take in what's called undesirable effect number 6 under the so-called Sigma rules, which is groundwater dependent ecosystems and the interconnection between hydro and surface and groundwater. So there is an opportunity there for somebody else's approved plan to get overruled. So how we can think ahead of where these dots might connect and short circuit the worst case scenarios, but litigation is often one of those worst case scenarios. A necessary scenario, perhaps some might say, but if we can adequately do a water budget. I think one of the things that makes the Ventura River an optimistic place for me to work is that if you look at the annual supply on an annualized basis, there may be enough water there to offset the total annual demand, including environmental. But how we deploy infrastructure and projects that can either reduce consumptive use or perhaps increase the capture and storage flow credits of these peak flows. In the winter of 2019 is a great example of when it rains a lot. We've seen climate change scenarios where we have longer periods of dryness punctuated by bigger storms. Have we thought through how to get out of tin cups and barrels, water tanks, other kinds of storage? Groundwater infiltration is, depending on where, it's not a needed tool, but with the work that's coming out of the integrated water strategies, IWS model, or at least having a pointer where we can start to quantify what the effect might be, whether there's an effective cost benefit. Yeah.
So I'm not sure what your definition of a water budget is, but the purpose of the model we're developing is to answer the questions they're asking. This model tool to simulate how much water comes in, where does that water go, groundwater, surface flows, how much water is taken out of the system, where is it used, how much is used, and how much comes back to the river, how much stays in the groundwater, surface water, where does that groundwater come to the surface, and how does it all reach or not. So your call for a water budget is important, and the tool we're developing is trying to answer those fundamental questions they're asking.
And then for the Ventura River Stream flow, the way I view that project is really to add another layer to that. It's not really going to affect the budget so much as it's going to change the timing of where that water will be used or not. And so my goal really is to change the timing so the increased flow happens when it needs to happen. But that water ultimately is just part of that overall budget.
So, well, first I would say it's very impressive the work that's been done. Opportunities to enhance people and clearly in the context of looking at alternatives like big infrastructure projects, water and things like that, in terms of long-term resilience and sustainability, the type of work that's been done. And in the context of thinking about how this work can resolve all these issues related to flows and the water budget is that historically in the watershed, the demand has been limited to a large extent by the beach and the aquifer. And so water is pumped until it can't pump anymore and you have to see this in storage and then hopefully it rains, replenishes that reservoir. It doesn't get depleted. Now, we're talking about adding significant amounts of water back to the basins, and of course it's essential, and you add more water in the basin, the sort of status quo of how we operate. Historically, it's been that a lot of that water will be used to crops, and so where do we, at what point do we have assurance that the river and stream maintain some minimal well? That's and my view, and I'm Jim's view, is that these things go hand in hand. We talk about voluntary opportunities and regulatory You can't ensure that you can the river flow. That's what I consider that. You said it's special. And all invest in these types of projects to volunteer needs, and that eases the burden on farmers and these water districts. And I don't think that in reality, it makes sense to view these approaches as sort of one or the other sort of silos. We need to be thinking about long-term, largest voluntary opportunities and the essential regulatory to provide assurance for the river. And in our view, I think it's probably that's where the regulation is.
Regina, I would just add, I agree. I think the important thing is certainty, and it just needs some kind of certainty. So give us some kind of baseline that we can shoot for. Let's see if we can get there. But certainty is very important for planning. And that's what this is, a planning grant. To try to address that certainty.
Well, I guess that's what I want to make sure, we didn't really talk about the planning, but the program. But the components of that have a framework, and the framework is only as good as members at the table to collaborate. The collaboration and the partnership and the agreement on those targets together as a community that we're all going to hit those targets or not, or at least find a way there. At least we're going to agree we're all going in the same direction. And then we'll decide how, what the different opportunities are that we're all going to try to get there. So that framework is inherent and part of the planning group. And then second, I think it's important to also note in the planning group, also the OBGMA we didn't talk about, but what Tom said, there's 24 projects, well, there's really 25 if you read the grant, and one of them is for the OBGMA to do, they have $150,000 to do a study that's more granular, like what the other Ventura is going to do. Look at pumping and how, whether or not there's different play lenses that they believe there could be within the spaces, the OHI. So I think that will also help inform and bring that phase of forward to partnership and collaborate in that framework. And that's really important as pulses come through to in the upper watershed to the OBGMA first. That basin has to be the table. And collaborate. And then also then it will then flow into the next basin or the other couple of flow that informs its flow. So and we all need, the key is collaboration, and ideally is what this planning effort is all about. But the projects that everybody seen on the map, those are just examples of a few examples of what we can do. There's a lot of different projects out there, which is part of why we're interested in looking at what those opportunities are in more depth. But I think, Paul's putting raising to his house, maybe there's some really great conjunctive use opportunities between water districts, and there's a lot of creative thought process that can happen.
Yeah, I just do want to make sure everyone is aware that what we are talking about in terms of the Ventura River Stream Flow project, that does include over a dozen project components and over 24 individual projects. Those individual projects are simply planned efforts for those. So there is not going to be any actual implementation of anything. What we're going to be doing is planning these and trying to figure out what the benefits are, so that then we can apply for funding to actually do it and then see if we do get those benefits. Yeah. And also to say that this is just one sort of segment of potential projects. There could be another round of planning to include another, 24 projects in the future. So this is just sort of the first sort of excursion into doing this larger scale sort of planning effort in this watershed. And it really is sort of replicating efforts that are occurring in other watersheds who have the same stressors as this one.
And I thought, I hope that this framework leads into our watershed council management plan addendum of an in-stream flood. I was really looking at also every in-stream flood action ideally would be looked at in terms of resilience for the ecosystem and for. It's not just about in-stream flood. There's benefits of in-stream flood that we should be looking at.
It was Kevin and John.
Okay, so, that my hands will try to keep it short. So the state water board, we see this need for thresholds. They need to know what are the ecosystem flows needed. The flow recommendation that we're expecting to get from the California Conservation and Wildlife is going to be a recommendation that is perhaps most ideal for fish, but that requires ecosystems might be infeasible with the economic reality of how water is used in the watershed. So that's one of the job is to use this modeling tool to evaluate the recommendation for fish versus the other beneficiaries of the water, city, agriculture, etc. But we can't manage down to zero or even a number above that. So we say we one word set a flow requirement, and that's a process. It's not continuous. But say we say one word sets a flow requirement for parts of the watershed. The implementation to making those thresholds happen is up to everyone in this room and people that aren't here too. I'm serious. Like the state water board, could set a flow requirement that's at the regulatory state, but then we say, community, in terms of the watershed, you guys have two balance sustainability agencies, you have these voluntary agreements, or the other water management actions that are occurring. Is there a way through these ongoing planning efforts to achieve these thresholds? And if not, then if those fail, then the state water board might have to take a more rigorous approach, because we need to see real results. But we want the community to have, we want the community to have the opportunity to do it in a way that works for you guys. And that not only puts water in the river, but maybe restores physical habitat, takes down a dam, takes out a rondo, makes water users, useful water users, farmers, have more resilient water supplies.
Well, and I would just say that, and from my perspective, Jody just stepped out with Farm Bureau. But on the other hand, it's also very useful for us to engage with water users, or whatever, when the state board does come up with some kind of timeline and plan that gives us targets. So, for example, one of the things that didn't happen in the Ventura River, and it apparently is related to the lack of investigated, because to actually come up with some guidelines about how to address nutrient contamination or nutrient loading because of the manure mat, et cetera. Those efforts sort of came to a halt because there wasn't enough really guidelines or some path forward with that in the Ventura watershed. Because initially we thought there was going to be a conditional waiver type of, as is used with irrigated land down in county, and that didn't happen. So I would say that you appreciate the flexibility, but it's also useful to have some sort of target guidelines. So it gives everybody sort of something that they can look at and try to shoot for.
Yeah, and that if we know enough, once we know what the number is, then we can say, okay, what's this 3,000 temperature feet? Where does that bring us towards that target? Is that enough? Is it not?
Lynn.
First, thank you, Sean and Regina, for your comments. And I'm always looking at it to provide like to fly at 30,000 feet, and I think about all the work that's being done in this watershed, including all this new work that you guys have been doing. And looking at long range, so amending the watershed management plan to include some of that information
Also, having just completed the IRWM plan for 2019, we took the first step towards addressing the climate change impacts and resilience strategies that we need to be looking at. And I think what I'd like to see this watershed, and actually our other two watersheds as well, is to develop a broad view of what our resilience strategies are going to be across the board. So there's the work that you guys are doing. There's many other things happening. You see this water district has, a pretty robust water efficiency program. There's the other water districts do as well. So what are the ag folks doing now? What are the other activities that we need to be looking at? Talking about heat islands, talking about, there's just a whole laundry list of strategies that we can build on what Regina already said, what Tom said. And I think that's going to be a heavy lift in the sense that everybody's kind of working on these. There's still some silos. There's grant silos. Every GIM program is a grant silo, has its own criteria. What you guys are doing is fitting somewhat into a grant program. So I think that's going to be an important job of this council. Of connecting all of this information and where is it we're trying to get to, and we need to quantify as much as we can for the reasons. But maybe we can have a conversation at a future council meeting about following up with the work that climatologists did for us on what our critical climate impacts are and how we work together to get there using all these tools. We've got great tools in the way right now. It's exciting to see where there's a lot of inspiration out there. And I just hope you guys are working with the CEDAS and the other the watershed to make sure that, because they have a lot of activity going on that can also be quantified into savings that can be added to, or additional measures they can take, or they can take in conjunction with the landowner toolkit things. So
yeah, I would say yes to that. I mean, it's important to point out, I guess we just sort of assume it, but it's important to point out that everything that's being done in the Ventura watershed is perfectly relevant to the entire county. It's just that the funding opportunity presented itself best in the Ventura watershed. Challenges that the Ventura watershed has. And so this is just sort of the hotbed of activity, but it's not because we choose to be just selective about it. It's just that's how it happens. So everything is being thought of, with that higher view as how can we expand it out too. There's been conversations about the landowner resiliency program, other areas, but we just haven't had the proper funding out to be able to do that. So there are those conversations we're having, Lynn. And presumably, as we move forward with the Ventura River in-stream flow project itself, there will be opportunities that build on meetings that we're going to be planning for the council, because there is a role for the council in that grant itself. But presumably there will be some maybe strategic selection for assigned to advisory committees made up from the membership. Tom?
I just want to say publicly, I think I heard some conciliatory words from Ben with regard to voluntary. It could be a complementary strategy for regulatory. To what extent yet to be seen, but I don't always hear that from members of the environmental community, which at times have a more binary approach to all regulate, leave voluntary out of it. So I think, but then likewise, I just want to let everybody know, like the hard work that Kevin Delaney has been doing about working with a lot of people in Sacramento who are trying to get more water in stream, and not everybody thinks of voluntary as a way to get there. It doesn't have a long and lengthy track record of performance. It's a relatively new tool. But I think by one observations, start putting that out there. Some of these projects are a pathway to get to the goal. And I heard you say that voluntary agreements are one of your sixth scenario for developing, but I just repledge whatever we can do across different leaders from the state water board into the conversation. And with that, I know that we'll do everything we can to support the voluntary.
Yeah, I do want to say that there is a lot of visibility for this project, and so we all feel sort of the pressure to be able to.
I just wanted to point out, you talk about voluntary. We currently have voluntary demand reduction in the watershed. I know that Bert's newsletters you're talking about like 42%, you know, over 30%. And before the drought, any discussion of reducing demand by 30% would be insanity, crazy talk. Okay, we've done it. So I think that that's a really good sign that there's, I mean, when push comes to shove, people are willing to do the right thing. And, well, there is no monetary incentive in general. So now taking the next step, I think we could probably get another 30% out of it with some incentives. I spent a lot of money on retrofitting my house. It's not cheap and easy. And I think it would take some incentive to get people to do it. But, you know, we probably already got the low hanging fruit, so to speak, on the voluntary. People taking out their lawns and that kind of thing. But, you know, there's definitely more that can be done. Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say the projects do, ensure to flow planning projects. There is going to be some scoping for incentivizing some programs to make sure that certain things can get done that is appropriate. So there is that. All right, I think we've come, we're at noon. Thank you everyone for allowing us to intrude a little bit of your time. Tom, Regina, stick around. So we will send out the notice for the next meeting as soon as we possibly can get that pulled together. So please look for that. And appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
A little bit longer than they were useful.
Interesting. I like how it flowed. I like how the meeting flowed with everything. All the presentations actually fit pretty well with each other. Do you not see that?